So, you know, I have been impressed with some of the folks that y'all may have dealt with, because they've had an opportunity to come into court and they were prepared. They had information that I needed to help me with the case. I presume sometimes y'all are doing some interviews with folks that maybe have family law issues and that type of thing. And I need to tell you how much I appreciate what y'all have done, because providing accessibility to folks that don't have the resources just relieves a tremendous burden off me or off all the courts. And I appreciate y'all doing that, because you know, when people don't have representation or don't have the opportunity to understand what the law is, they become frustrated, they become angry, they become disenfranchised, and they don't participate in our community as we would want our fellow citizens to participate. And I really appreciate what y'all have done. I know y'all have seen a myriad of type cases. I'm kind of curious, since I just see a lot of family law, some criminal law stuff in here. I'm kind of curious some of the type of cases y'all are providing advice for.
I'll let Donna, ladies first.
Okay. Well, a lot of the cases, most of the cases that we do, that I've experienced with the Family Law Information Center are the family law issues. Most of the clientele that we see are either young, very young adults, not really established financially. A lot of, actually some women in just difficult situations, a lot of men, trying to determine what their rights and responsibilities are, and a lot of times when the divorce cases come through, they don't really understand how difficult the legislature has made it for a couple to get through the court system. You know, there's a lot of paperwork that they have to file, and they're bogged down. They come to before the judge, or they've oftentimes have come before the judge before coming to see us, and they've been kind of kicked back out of court because they don't have the necessary parenting plan.
Right.
They don't have the necessary child support worksheet.
Right.
That's required now, that the legislature has required. They don't even know where to get it. And the clerk's office can't really offer them legal advice, and they don't have the money to go hire an attorney to get this information. You know, most of them are either, they're working night shift, or working, at the McDonald's, or,
Yeah, the majority of people I keep seeing are working, but they don't have the resources.
They don't have the money. They don't make enough.
Yeah.
So, but we do see an awful lot. Now, I've also seen some landlord-tenant cases, usually on the tenant side. I've seen a couple of those. A couple of land disputes, neighbor disputes. Individuals, they might own their property, but they're an elderly person on a fixed income, so they get into a dispute with their neighbor. They don't have the resources to go out and hire an attorney. So they've found this to be very useful.
Yeah. I think that's a big part of the FLIC program, and that a lot of times you can stop the litigation at the head, because a lot of times the people that come in don't understand the law, don't understand what's going on, like in a boundary dispute. And you can sit down and explain what the law says, and explain to them, look, these are some steps, some alternative dispute resolution steps that you can take to avoid going to court. Talk to your neighbor, explain what's going on. And I found that in some cases that actually stops it right there, and it doesn't make it to you, Judge, because they finally understand what's going on.
Especially with neighbors, I would presume if you're able to help people work out their disputes between their neighbors, they want to keep living there. That's their home, and that, as you know, when people come to court, when they leave here, they're not very happy.
That's right.
They're not very happy with the people that sued them. They're not very happy with the court. And a lot of it, I think, is what you just talked about. They just didn't have an understanding of the process of what was going on.
That's right.
And anytime I think you can keep somebody from coming to court, it's a win-win for everybody.
I agree. I think that's one of the great things about the FLIC program, is being able to steer people aside. And then, of course, for the people that do come to court, I think it's beneficial, like Donna said, to be providing the documents so that they're not coming in and spending the court's time needlessly. It's saving some taxpayer dollars, saving court time, and even saving people that have hired attorneys, saving them some time because moving through the court more quickly and they're not building up fees, so.
What kind of cases are you seeing different than everybody else about?
About the same, Judge. You know, the program's designed for domestic, primarily, I believe, family law, that type thing. I think we mostly see that. We do see some other type civil cases, no criminal cases at all. You know, I think one of the big value of the program is legal assistance from an attorney these days is expensive, and there are a vast number of people in our community and across the country that just flat can't afford a lawyer. Those people are what do? You know, the legal aid only goes so far, it only reaches out so far. A lot of members of our community don't even know there's legal aid out there, but they get trapped where they need a lawyer, and they find out about this program and they come see a volunteer like us, and we're able to work them through what the law will do or what the law should do or what it can't do. And I'd say mostly you see a lot of divorces. We see a lot of divorces. How do we do this? How do we navigate? As Donna was saying, they don't even know they need a child support worksheet or parenting plan. And we can refer them to different sites on the internet that have those forms available, and some sites even explain how to complete them. I see grandparents coming in wanting to know how they can protect their grandchildren from a parent that has a drug problem or something like that. I've seen a number of those.
Well, how much time, I mean, y'all were all volunteers of the year, so y'all spent a good amount of time doing this. I know you see other lawyers. It's got to provide you a little camaraderie, because we miss that sometimes as lawyers, because we're always litigating against somebody else. But how often do you see folks, and how often do you meet? And I know you meet here in the law library, I presume, but
yes, sir.
How much time would it take out of you? Because you only have so many hours in a day. You got to make a living.
That's true, Judge. And you know, our professional rules of conduct, or the rules for a lawyer, and state that we should endeavor to spend about 50 hours a year on pro bono work for the public good. And it's not much time from our day. We might take a Friday morning once a quarter or something. It's not a tremendous amount of time, but I'm sure these Russell and Donna are like me. I oftentimes have people that follow up after.
Right.
And you remember I met with you, Mr. Bohr, a couple of Fridays ago, and you said blah blah blah. Can you explain that a little further? And I get that. And every now and then somebody actually hires me, and what I try and do is do that at a discounted price to help them along. So not a tremendous amount of time. It really isn't.
But they have enough attorneys now participating in the Family Law Information Center that it's basically one Friday morning out of a quarter. We spend a 30-minute interval with each client. I'm finding that we are busy pretty much from morning till noon.
I can see the crowd of people that are not here for court.
Right.
And so I know they're here to meet with lawyers. I see different lawyers in the hallway and visit with them. So I just had noticed the camaraderie with the lawyers. Hey, you got this, and I got the next hour. Hey, it's good to see you. And it also has got to be a little empowering for y'all to feel like that, you know what, this is part of what my responsibility, like you were talking about, while there may be bar rules that suggest us do some volunteer work, it's got to also make you feel good that, by golly, we're doing it. And then when somebody actually follows your advice, that's the most difficult. There's one thing to suggest, like when you say you got some follow-up calls that they're doing this, you got to feel good when you later.
Just the relief on their face when they walk out oftentimes is very fulfilling, because they don't understand, or oftentimes I'll see a lot of non-custodial parents coming in because of visitation issues. They don't understand what the paperwork says or
Right.
what their rights or responsibilities are. And when they walk out, they do have an understanding. They've had it explained to them to where they understand. And the court doesn't have time to sit down and go through the settlement agreements, and this is what your visitation rights are, this is what your responsibility is to provide visitation. And we can take that time and sit down and explain to them. And the relief is just, I mean, it makes me feel great.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It does. And I think that every once in a while you get somebody that really can't do it without a lawyer.
Right.
Because it's such a complicated situation. A lot of
Right.
times with children, it becomes a very complicated situation. And so the calls that we get after the fact, I'm sure that all of us have at one time or another taken those on pro bono because it's a situation that is dire, but they have to have an attorney. The flip side of the coin is a lot of people you can say, okay, you need an attorney for this. And you can provide some names that in the community, and there are
That do that
attorneys
type
that
of
step
work.
out.
That's right, as opposed
That's
to-
right. So we do get, it's not the majority of the people that come in, very small minority, but people that are just in the first step of their litigation, so you can guide them as to, these are the steps you need to take, but it's a matter that's going to need an attorney, and they'll ask for the names and you
Right.
refer.
Well, I know in the
Frequently.
domestic relations arena, that many times children are born out of unwed parents. And I recognize the father of this child that has not legitimated doesn't understand when I say, you don't have any specific rights to this child. That's what it's my child. So I recognize that. But the child born of unwed parents is not legitimated, and that's confusing sometimes to people. And I'm sure y'all run across that,
We
try
see
to
that a
provide
lot.
Great
Yeah.
deal.
Yeah.
Absolutely, Judge. We see that.
Yeah, and you know, the state policy, obviously, we'd like parents to be married before they have children, but the reality of the world is not that way. So I think when y'all assist parents in legitimating their children, it makes a big difference. And as y'all know, and because y'all all do a lot of domestic work or have done, is that when a non-custodial parent gets to participate in his child's life or her child's life, they contribute more. And it's not just financially, it's just the fact that being there
Involved.
makes a big difference. And I really think that's one of the unwritten successes that y'all will see, and then that we'll see down the road, of children of parents that may not live together, but they both participate in doing what's best interest of the child.
Absolutely.
And the children really benefit
Absolutely.
from that when they're able to work together like that. I've encouraged a lot of
Right.
non-custodial parents to actually to be involved and, to try to do what's best.
And I'm sure
for
there's
their
always a
children.
little, you don't use the word fear factor, but when relationships break up, it's difficult.
Right.
People have different mates, and there are a lot more dynamics. Now, do y'all ever run across any folks that have Social Security issues or Medicare or Medicaid issues? I know that's a whole different field, but I'm sure that's got to be with the change in the healthcare, may have some kind of issue coming about.
It's not unusual to have some of those type issues or issues that we might not necessarily practice in.
Right.
And as Russell said earlier, that, knowing other attorneys in the
Right.
community, to say, that's not a particular area that I handle, but you do have an issue there that needs to be addressed. Here's a few names you can give a call to and maybe get some answers from. Sometimes our folks, don't like what they hear.
Right. Oh, I understand that. As we as lawyers give bad news. I mean, I hate to say that, but we look for what's the worst thing could happen, then we'll go our way backwards, as opposed to, people don't come see you when they won the lottery. They come to see
Right.
when somebody took their lottery ticket.
That's
Very
right.
true.
Right.
They're
But
winning
they
lottery
do
tickets.
seem to appreciate knowing that
Right.
they haven't won the
Oh,
lottery.
I agree, I
Right.
agree, but they need to know. But-
Yeah,
true.
right.
So the information, I guess, is, because I also presume that sometimes people come in with what they think is one issue, and you say, hang on just a minute, while that is a concern, this is the big issue you've got to deal with first, and
That's
then we go
exactly
to
right.
point B.
Sure. That's exactly
Oftentimes,
right.
that's with the legitimation issue.
Right.
It's, they'll come in because they think the custodial parent has a drug problem or
Right.
has an issue, and you have to, well, here's what you need, you got to deal with the legitimation issue and,
Before you can do.
right,
A,
a
B,
whole
C.
lot of, yeah.
I think most of the time there's an issue within an issue.
Right.
It's not just the overarching divorce issue, but there are other issues out there that need to be addressed too. Real estate issues or underlying. And they're, like you said, Judge, they're not the main issue, they're not the biggie, but they need to be addressed, and sometimes the parties don't even know they need to be addressed.
And I know that y'all been doing this for a few years, and with while the economy is beginning to pick back up, I also presume that early on there will be some issues with some landlord-tenant issues that, you know, when the economy gets a little difficult, it's sometimes it's harder for people to maintain their residence, or but they're going to be foreclosed, or they're losing their opportunity to stay where they were staying because they weren't able to. Y'all have many of those?
I haven't.
I haven't really experienced a lot of, I've had a couple of landlord-tenant issues, but mostly, I haven't really seen a whole lot of
But I
you
think
know,
that's
folks
a good,
on the verge of
I think that's a
bankruptcy.
good sign
Yeah.
then, that maybe the economy's getting
Right.
better.
That's been my experience as well, Judge. There has not been a lot. And so
A lot
I
of
think
child
it is-
support
Right. Oh, yeah.
issues
Oh,
with
yeah.
regard to
Yeah.
individuals
Oh, yeah.
who've lost their
Their
jobs.
jobs.
And with the social security issue, I've had some
Right.
a couple of disabled people, they're already drawing social security.
Right.
I do a lot of social security disability
Right.
cases. I haven't seen any
Oh, okay.
cases like that come in, but I've had a couple that, you know, were waiting, they filed a disability claim, waiting for their claim to come to a head and facing a child support issue. And, you know, they can't pay child support. They're worried about getting locked up because if they're locked up, they can't draw disability
Right.
benefits if you're in jail. So
Right.
you know, it's like a,
It's a domino effect.
yes, yeah.
With our
It's a tough
population
situation.
aging, no offense to you and I, you young lawyers, do any have y'all noticed more questions dealing with elderly? I know one of y'all talking about grandparents visitation, but other specifically that are elder issues. I know now that people need to have a power of attorney, a durable power of attorney, a living will. We want to make sure that even if we have nothing, we want to make sure that what we have goes to the heirs that we want them to have. Y'all have any really, I don't think that's their wills per se, but
There are estate issues, or there are
Right.
concerns. I've had several concerns with mental acuity declining.
Right.
And what do we do in this process? How do we protect our mom or our dad, even if they're an out-of-state mom or dad? You know, there's somebody kind of moving in, the vulture effect,
Right.
stepping in, and what can we do to affect that, to change that?
Right.
Yeah. I can't say that I've run across too many elderly issues. One of the things that is not a whole lot, but I do see from time to time are immigrants
right.
here that, you know, oftentimes they'll bring an interpreter with them because they don't speak
Sure.
fluent English, and they're needing a divorce or an adoption or something like that. And, you know, they're working with not only our legal system and trying to understand that, but just even, you know, this country and the culture, if you will,
Right.
they're having to contend with. So we do see some of that. I don't know if y'all have, but I've seen 2 or 3 here recently where there was an immigrant involved.
Well, with our armed services having so many troops going back and forth over to the Middle East and stuff, I presume a case, and we may see some veterans. I noticed in my court with some criminal issues, there've been a couple of folks that were veterans of the armed services that had some issues. Now, whether or not they were directly related to their time in service, it's unknown. But I presume if somebody's a veteran, y'all recognize that, and then we try to get them over, check with folks at the Veterans Affairs or those type of, y'all had any?
Absolutely. I think that generally we're supplied with some pamphlets and stuff like that, that when we come across issues with veterans or different things like that, we can actually hand those pamphlets out to people and direct them to the services they need outside. Because a lot of times with veterans, there are access to monies that might not be available to the rest of the public that can help them.
So I guess that's when y'all are doing your interview, you're finding out, you learn more about the individual and what opportunities they may have for assistance with them that you don't ordinarily just come in and see. Because if I want to come get a divorce, I'm going to go see a lawyer about a divorce.
That's right.
Sit down there. But here, when you're sitting down there, well, while we're here, are there any other issues that we need to talk about?
Yes.
Or find out resources that
Right.
they might not know they had.
Right.
Yeah. That's, certainly that's occurred, sure.
And I do believe that y'all will continue to see, and we know, many grandparents are rearing their grandchildren.
Right.
And we talked about some issues about maybe the cognitive decline. In a couple of group meetings I've had recently, I have encouraged people, I don't know if I'm going to call this legal rights, that to give not only just the healthcare power of attorney, but with their physician to sign a notice that gives them permission to contact my family members if the physician noticed any decline in my cognitive ability. Because I think that many times, other than lawyers, physicians may be the first to see it. I try to encourage folks when they, to keep someone from coming in, or my banker. If all of a sudden, and I'm sure y'all have seen that, where somebody's come in and gotten a power of attorney because they befriended someone and they're draining their accounts.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
And it's kind of a difficult thing.
Absolutely. It's a valuable program to the community. It certainly is, and as Don and Russell said, there's some self-satisfaction.
Absolutely.
I enjoy doing it. I do. Kind of. My dad always says it's kind of like bread on the water. Some of it will flow back to you, and it gives you a good feeling of contributing to the community.
I think every time that we can touch somebody in a positive manner with information, it's good for everybody. It's good for that individual, but it's also good for the community. And there's something to be said for what we do helps people. Because many times we are the bearer of bad news. I know I am.
Yes, sir.
Good news and bad news. Good news, you got here on time. Bad news, you're not going out the same way you came in.
Right.
Right.
Because there are consequences for one's conduct. But I need to tell you how much I appreciate you, each one of you personally, for what you do, because it does make a difference in this community. And this is the community we live in.
That's right.
Right.
Thank you, Judge.
Yeah, absolutely. And I appreciate it. Thank y'all.
We appreciate
Thank
what you do, Judge. Thank you.
Thanks.